So hello everyone, good evening. I'm Lonnie Friedman. I'm the new Health Literacy Specialist in our newest branch, Mackenzie Health Vaughan Library. This presentation will involve 30-second to 90-second elevator pitch for 29 health books. This will give you an opportunity to sort of taste test which books can help you with your health information needs, as well as pique your interest for your to-read list. These are the topics I'm going to cover today. Thank you everyone for submitting your topics to discuss. I wasn't able to get to all of them, but at the end of the presentation, you can send me an email. I'll put my email up and we can talk further if you need other recommendations. So each category has 3 or more books such that you'll be able to get different perspectives from healthcare professionals and can compare their evidence. With the help of your healthcare professional, you can empower yourself to take control of your health with these book suggestions. So let's begin. We're starting with diet books. After his massive success with How Not to Die, Dr. Greger hones in on the optimal criteria to enable weight loss while considering how these foods affect our health and longevity. He lays out the key ingredients of the ideal weight loss diet, factors such as calorie density, the insulin index, and the impact of food on our gut microbiome, showing how evidence-based eating is crucial to our success. But How Not to Diet goes beyond food to identify 21 weight loss accelerators available to our bodies, incorporating the latest discovery in cutting-edge areas like chronobiology, which is time eating, to reveal the factors that maximize our natural fat-burning capabilities. You can also download his free Daily Dozen app with his 21 tweaks on your phone. A highly readable book with thousands of citations. Oh, there we go. With thousands of citations. This is the first of 3 books by Dr. Greger in this presentation. And just one quick note, if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And at the end of the presentation, I'll get to them. On to our next book. Again, quick taste. Dr. Fung outlines the rise of obesity since the 1970s. What used to be 3 square meals a day is now 5 to 6 meals of snacking and grazing, or sheer overeating. He also explains how the food industry has influenced practitioners and public via marketing and money. But there is a solution. The obesity code posits that true long-term weight loss can be achieved by balancing hormones like insulin in the body. This balancing can happen through intermittent fasting and eating whole food, unprocessed foods. This is one of the 3 books featured by Dr. Fung in this presentation. Dr. Lee's book describes, like our previous 2 books, how food can be curative if we consume the proper whole foods. Like How Not to Diet, Lee dives deep into the science with how whole foods could have mitigating effects on diseases and ailments. Backed up by hundreds of scientific studies and meta-analysis, Eat to Beat Disease isn't about what foods to avoid, but rather is a life-changing guide to the hundreds of healing foods to add to your meals that support the body's defense systems. Add green tea and blueberries to your diet for their antioxidant effects against free radicals. All of this and more in Lee's approachable book. One other thing I forgot to mention, after this presentation is over, I will send everyone an email with the list of all of these books that I talk about. So don't worry about scrounging around to bookmark each of them. On to our next one. Dr. T. Colin Campbell and colleagues conducted the most comprehensive nutrition intervention in history with their China study. Looking at the data from the 1970s and 80s in 65 rural and urban counties in China, the China study looked at all-cause mortality, that is cancer, heart disease, diabetes, etc., and overwhelmingly concluded that the areas that adopted a predominantly whole foods plant-based diet and reduced or eliminated animal products were found to enjoy the longest quality life. This updated version goes into minute detail on the study and reveals more scientific revelations from this landmark study 30 years ago. Now here's our first book for heart disease, which is called Undo It. If you or a loved one have experienced heart-related diseases like angina or heart attacks, Doctors Dean and Ann Ornish have outlined a holistic guide to combating heart disease in its various forms by focusing on simple tweaks, again, using whole foods and implementing exercise to help control the condition. Following their diet, exercise, reducing stress strategies, and family support system, Undo It will give readers a scientifically backed plan to help fight heart disease. And now with 70 recipes. Our next book is called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Dr. Elseston convincingly argues that a plant-based oil-free diet can not only prevent and stop the progression of heart disease, but also reverse its effects. Using evidence from the unprecedented 20-year study on heart disease, Ellison provides the reader with a deep dive into heart disease and why the current industry focuses on treatment rather than prevention. Included in this book is the immense findings of the study, as well as recipes and best practices for readers to implement to help them address heart disease. Our last heart disease book is How Not to Die. The book that took the world by storm, and for good reason, as it outlines the top 15 causes of death in America and the Western world, with number 1 being heart disease. Dr. Greger parses through thousands of studies on heart disease causes and interventions. By using a whole food plant-based diet, like our previous books have argued, can help mitigate or reverse the effects of heart disease and the other top 14 causes of death. Fun fact, Dr. Greger was inspired to become a doctor because his grandmother was able to reverse her heart disease even after having a heart attack in her 60s by going exclusively living off of plant-based whole foods and to live into her 80s. And one quick thing to note, even though so far, other than Dr. Jason Fung's and Lee's, a lot of these have been propagated as whole food plant-based diets. There's a lot of leeway with all of these. A key thing to do is to take the advice of the books and reference with your practitioner to make sure to adopt what works for you. Okay, so this is our first exercise book. I try to, instead of giving you specifics like these are the best weight books or these are the best yoga books, I try to find books that are overall looking at exercise as a whole. And so this is our first one. Dr. Lieberman's Exercise is a different type of exercise books. Instead of giving you sets and reps of the best exercises, he delves into the history of exercise as a phenomenon in modern society, where it came from, why it's effective, and what you can do to work for you. As such, Lieberman dispels a lot of myths, such as sitting as bad as smoking, with large scientific studies conducted through diverse populations throughout the world, and how humans have evolved to purposefully save as much energy as possible, and what that means for your exercise habits. A breezy and poignant read, Exercise provides a new frame for how to approach your exercise routine and why it's vital to have one. Our second exercise book is called In Praise of Walking. Diet always comes first because you can't outrun a bad diet. However, if you could shed the pounds, what if you could shed the pounds rather by just merely walking? Armari makes exactly that case, but also connects on how walking has been the most natural form of physical activity for humans. Beyond that, he provides the scientific evidence on why walking is a powerful tool, the cultural implications of it, its accessibility, and how it repairs and improves brain and immune function, as well as how it has been used as a social activity. Think the great philosophical walks. With practical tips on how to add more steps into your day, In Praise of Walking will get you off your chair and into some running shoes to venture outside for a nice walk. Our third exercise book recommendation comes from Michelle Seeger, who has a PhD. Do you hate exercising? Struggle to stick to an exercise regimen? Dr. Seeger's book is for those who go to the gym on January 1st and find themselves eating a whole bag of Doritos on January 2nd, myself included. Michelle focuses on the science of motivation. Using scientific backed evidence, this book will help you find the type of physical activity that works for you by giving you strategies for consistency, as well as providing psychological tools for motivation that will bring you a lifetime of fitness, whatever that means for you. All right, our very first, now I'm going to go into stroke books. Our very first one is a part of a popular series. You might have seen this when you type in 100 questions and answers in Vaughan Public Library's catalog. You'll get a whole slew of 100 questions and answers of heart disease, of stroke, and what have you. And I've highlighted this one for stroke because it's a good one. Providing a doctor's and patient's views, 100 questions and answers about stroke, a Leahy Clinic Guide provides authoritative, practical answers to the most common questions asked by patients and their loved ones. A part of a great series in this style, Answers About Stroke, is written by an expert in the field. This clearly written book is a complete guide to causes, treatments, and much more. Including actual patient commentary, 100 questions and answers about stroke is an invaluable resource. On to our second book about stroke. It's called Stronger After Stroke. Stronger After Stroke puts the power of recovery in the reader's hands by providing simple to follow instructions for reaching the highest possible level of recovery. Basic concepts covered include repetition of task-specific practice, proper scheduling of practice, setting goals, and measuring recovery. By providing a practical roadmap that you can use in conjunction with your doctor, Dr. Levine completely revised the second edition to incorporate feedback from readers and the latest research data, including a recovery core concept chapter that defines the stages of recovery and explains how these stages can structure efforts towards recovery. This is a great companion resource to your doctor's advice. Our last book about stroke is called My Stroke of Insight. On December 10th, 1996, Jill Bolt Taylor, a 37-year-old Harvard-trained brain scientist, experienced a massive stroke in the left hemisphere of her brain. As she observed her mind deteriorate to the point that she could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of her life, all within 4 hours, Taylor alternated between the euphoria of the intuitive and kinesthetic right brain, in which she felt a sense of complete well-being and peace, and the logical sequential left brain, which recognized she was having a stroke and enabled her to seek help before she was completely lost. It would take her 8 years to fully recover. This is a personalized account of her recovery that presents the latest interventions for recovery. This is a narrative that will bring hope to its readers. A very personal book, a must read. Now we're into our COVID-19 book. So I picked 3 COVID-19 books, all 3 of them, because it's still a ever evolving situation. They more look at sort of the macro picture of how does COVID affect our society. So our first one, a familiar face, Dr. Michael Greger, before his public recognition on nutrition, Dr. Greger focused on how infectious disease originates from our food. Tracing the evolution from the past until today, Dr. Greger spotlights emerging flu and coronaviruses as he examines where these pathogens originated, as well as the underlying conditions and significant human role that have exacerbated their lethal influence to a large or even global levels. Dr. Greger reveals not only what we can do to protect ourselves and our loved ones during a pandemic, but also what human society must rectify to reduce the likelihood of an even worse catastrophe in the future. A fascinating read that is more poignant than ever. Our second book about COVID is called Panic by Slavoj Žižek. Philosopher Žižek writes, during the height of lockdown, the greater implications of COVID-19 on public institutions and culture. Žižek examines why governments renowned for ruthless cuts in public spending can suddenly conjure up trillions, why toilet paper becomes a commodity as precious as diamonds, and what these precedents mean for society writ large. Žižek, with his consistent wit, insight, and popular culture references, provides readers with a provocative snapshot of the crisis and how this might be a new pivot point in the 21st century. Our third and final book for COVID-19 books, recommend reads. This just came out. We just got this at the library. 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World by Fareed Zakaria. Notice how the last year and a half has flown by, and yet it seems like an eternity since you last enjoyed a carefree travel. Fareed Zakaria argues history has sped up and covers the 10 lessons that a post-pandemic world will need to heed. With a lucid approach, 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World speaks to past, present, and future. And while urgent and timely, is sure to become an enduring reflection on life in the early 21st century. Moving on to women's health, our first book that I'll talk about is The Vagina Bible. From Canadian gynecologist Dr. Jen Gunter breaks through all fears, fallacies, and misinformation in The Vagina Bible. Dr. Gunter knows the questions women and men have about female sexual health, and in The Vagina Bible, she answers them all. This book is for the 16-year-old trying to figure out tampons, the 26-year-old wondering how to avoid a UTI, the 36-year-old trans woman navigating her new anatomy, the 46-year-old worried about changing appearance of her vulva, the 56-year-old looking into HPV vaccine for her daughter and maybe herself, and the 66-year-old experiencing painful sex. This is a must-read for all women. Our second book for women's health is Mayo Clinic's The Menopause Solution. Backed by the authority of Mayo Clinic, Dr. Fobion confronts menopause symptoms such as weight gain, mood swings, and low sex drive with clear advice from a trusted source. This includes a complete look at what happens to your body before, during, and after menopause. Mayo Clinic knows that what works for one woman doesn't necessarily work for another. In approachable terms, she presents a balanced, unbiased overview of what to expect midlife and beyond. You'll find accurate information on pre-menopause, premature menopause, menopause symptoms, long-term effects of estrogen loss, and a wide variety of therapies to enhance health. Our last book recommended read for women's health is the PCOS Plan. Polycystic ovary syndrome is the most common reproductive disorder in the world, affecting an estimated 8 to 20% of women of reproductive age, almost half of whom are unable to conceive. PCOS is also associated with increased risk of heart disease, ovarian and endometrial cancers, and type 2 diabetes. Doctors Peikwana and Fung reveal the explicit connections between insulin and PCOS and how interventions in fasting, diet, and exercise can be tailored to tackle PCOS-specific challenges. Now we're gonna get some recommended reads for a diabetes book. Our first one is Mastering Diabetes. Current medical wisdom advises that anyone suffering from diabetes or pre-diabetes should eat a low carbohydrate, high fat diet. But in this revolutionary book, Kambata, PhD, and Barbaro, MPH, rely on a century of research to show that advice is misguided. While it may improve short-term blood glucose control, such a diet also increases long-term risk for chronic diseases like cancer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, chronic kidney disease, and fatty liver disease. Mastering Diabetes then advises a low-fat, plant-based, whole foods diet to combat type 1 and 2 and pre-diabetes. Backed by over 800 sources, this book offers readers a practical step-by-step plan that includes recipes and lifestyle changes for controlling diabetes. With slightly different advice, our second book is by Jason Dr. Fung, The Diabetes Code. The book that put Dr. Fung in the public's consciousness. The Diabetes Code reveals that type 2 diabetes is reversible. Writing with clear, persuasive language, he explains why conventional treatments that rely on insulin or other blood glucose-lowering drugs can exacerbate the problem, leading to significant weight gain or even heart disease. The only way to treat type 2 diabetes effectively, he argues, is proper dieting and intermittent fasting, not medication. Appropriately written without sacrificing depth and scientific rigor, Fung's book is a great read for those interested in diabetes, especially type 2. Our last recommended reads, if you're interested in diabetes, is Life Without Diabetes by Roy Taylor. Having studied diabetes for over 40 years, Dr. Taylor, like our previous books, outlines how diabetes can be managed and possibly reversed through diet, exercise, and weight loss. With an included plan and history of diabetes, Life Without Diabetes will provide readers another great source to understand and manage their diabetes. And just a quick note on all the recommended reads I've given so far, you've noticed that a lot of them either say adopting a plant-based whole foods diet, or in some of the cases like Dr. Jason Fung and William Lee, they talk about whole foods, but they also include meat and dairy. This is something for you to figure out what works with you, again, with your practitioner, but I think it's very valuable to have these sides and to see sort of the slightly differences, and more importantly, about 90%, depending on if you go whole foods, plant-based, or whole foods, including dairy and meat, they agree with about 90% of each other. In other words, whole food diets is the way to go. But moving on to mental health books. This has nothing to do with diet. I have quite a few actually mental health books here. And the first one is This is Depression by Diane McIntosh. Depression is anger turned inwards. Dr. McIntosh provides readers a historical, one second. Sorry about that, just had to let someone in. Dr. McIntosh provides readers a historical overview of depression, how life experience, genetics, and hormone factors factor into depression, and explores the common overlap between depression and other mental and physical illnesses. She also outlines how to effectively communicate with others, your feelings and signs to look within yourself and your loved ones for depression. She also provides lots of resources for seeking help. Depression can be lonely, debilitating illness, but sufferers are not alone. There's always a path forward. Our second mental health book is The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health. Black Canadians and African Americans die at disproportionately high rates due to chronic illness, suffer from poverty, undereducation, and the effects of racism. Dr. Walker explores Black mental health in today's world, the forces that have undermined mental health progress, and what needs to happen for Black Canadians and African Americans to heal psychological distress, find community, and undo years of stigma and marginalization in order to access effective mental health care. Furthermore, Dr. Walker outlines necessary strategies and resources for overcoming mental health issues in the Black community, a very timely book. Our third mental health book is called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Lori Gottlieb is a therapist who goes to therapy. With startling wisdom and humor, Gottlieb invites us into her world as both clinical and as a clinician and patient, examining the truths and fictions we tell ourselves and others as we teeter on the tightrope between love and desire, meaning and morality, guilt and redemption, terror and courage, hope and change. With candor and intimacy, this disarmingly funny account of what it means to be human will appeal to everyone who wants a good laugh and a good cry. It's a great read. It's really taken the world by storm. Another mental health book we have, this one is about anxiety, and it's called First We Make the Beast Beautiful. There is a Chinese proverb that states, before you can conquer a beast, you must make it beautiful. Sarah Wilson first came across this Chinese proverb in psychiatrist Kay Redfield Jameson's memoir, An Unquiet Mind, and it became the key to understanding her lifelong struggle with anxiety. With glaring clarity and the benefit of a journalist's readable style, First We Make the Beast Beautiful examines the multifaceted factors to consider when living with anxiety, as well as practical tips for coping. Now I'm going to talk about 3 mind/sleep books. Our first one is called Dementia Reimagined. Dementia Reimagined is a unique work. Dr. Powell's grandmother and mother were both diagnosed with dementia. This is part doctor's public notice, part memoir. She focuses on care and gives practical tips and insights on how to deal with loved ones in your life who are living with dementia. With a sober and honest account, Dr. Powell provides her readers with a thoughtful and useful narrative for those interested in dementia. Our second book for mind and sleep health is called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. When Michael set out to research how LSD and psilocybin are being used to provide relief to people suffering from difficult to treat conditions such as depression, addiction, and anxiety, he did not intend to write what is undoubtedly his most personal book. But upon discovering how these remarkable substances are improving the lives, not only of the mentally ill, but also of a healthy people coming to grips with the challenges of everyday life, he decided to explore the landscape of the mind in the first person as well as the third. Michael sifts through historical record to separate the truth about these mysterious drugs, from the myths that have surrounded them since the 1960s. A unique and elegant blend of science, memoir, travel writing, history, and medicine. How to Change Your Mind is a triumph of participatory journalism and will give you new insights onto mental health. A great read. Okay, for our last recommended read for tonight, this one is about sleep. It's called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Sleep is the most important but least understood aspect of our life. Compared to other basic drives in life, eating, drinking, and reproducing, the purpose of sleep remains more elusive. Neuroscientist and sleep expert Matthew Walker provides a revolutionary exploration of sleep, examining how it affects every aspect of our physical and mental health and well-being. Charting the most cutting-edge scientific breakthroughs and marshaling his decades of research and clinical practice, Walker explains how we can harness sleep and improve learning, mood, and energy levels, regulate hormones, prevent cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, slow the effects of aging, and increase longevity overall. He also provides actual steps towards getting a better night's sleep every night. All right, so that is the end of all my recommended reads. I hope you were able to catch them. Again, I will send everyone an email with all of the titles, and each of those titles, I've hyperlinked them. So if you click on the email, it will send you to Vaughan Public Libraries and you can immediately put them on hold or see if they're already available online for you. If you have, I'll certainly take questions now in the chat. If anyone has them, feel free to write it in there. However, if you're not comfortable putting out your question into the public, feel free to email me. That's lonnie.freeman@vaughan.ca. You can also reply to the email that I'll send everyone at the end of the presentation, and we can talk back and forth. One other thing I thought would be interesting, next Tuesday, I'll be doing another one of these seminars. It'll be quite different, actually. It's called Finding Reliable Health Information Online. And so what I've done is I picked 3 publicly accessible health databases, and I'm going to show you how to navigate them. So if you've ever wanted, let's say, the latest information on a particular cancer or the latest interventions on diabetes and what have you, and just general consumer health, please feel free to sign up for Finding Reliable Health Information. It's exactly next week, next Tuesday at the same time. Okay, I'll pause there. Is there any questions in the chat? Feel free to post any right now. I'll wait a couple minutes just to give people a chance. Stop sharing my screen. Here we go. Okay, everyone. If there isn't any last questions, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Again, I'm going to send everyone an email so you don't have to worry about having missed any of those titles. You'll be able to follow the links. I hope this was useful for everyone. Thank you for joining. This was certainly a quicker presentation, but I figured it's better to be quicker than to drone on and give you sort of a taste, as I said. So again, thank you, everyone. Great. I'm glad people found it interesting. It should, yeah, it's always, oh, I'm really glad to see everyone's positive reception. It's always tricky because there's thousands of books within all of these areas, and trying to find ones that I've read that general public find useful, as well as what's the latest scientific consensus. That's a hard, tricky balance, especially when you pick 3 or 4. Oh, great. I see that Matt already took out some ebooks via Hoopla and place holds. Awesome. That's great. So again, I'm going to send everyone an email. Please, if you look out for that, I'll send that in the next 15 minutes or so. And I hope to see everyone next week for finding reliable health information online. That should be a really interesting one. We'll go through 3 different online resources that's completely free and accessible for everyone to find consumer health information. Okay, until next week, thanks again, and have a good night, everyone.